you so much for joining us today for our live webinar. It should be a really fun night. We're going to talk all about beginner gardening topics, how to get your garden ready, soil prep, pretty much everything you need to know to go about getting started. So I'm very excited to have you all here with me today. First off, can you all hear me right now? I just want to make sure that everything is working good and we're all here. So there is a chat button. Please feel free to pop in and say hello and tell me where you're from. I see some people from Wisconsin, Pittsburgh. I am here in Zone 7 in Oklahoma City. It has been very, very cold this past couple of days. We have not been above freezing for like 3 or 4 days now. So it's been very cold. I'm so excited for the spring and getting started. So this webinar tonight will get me even more excited and anxious for spring to start. Wow, we have people from everywhere. Oh, Florida. I'm so jealous. Oh, I wish our temperatures were as good as you guys are today, I'm sure. I'm so happy to see so many people from everywhere. That's fantastic. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started today. So we're going to be talking everything you need to know about getting started in your backyard or your front yard, wherever you're going to be growing. And if you haven't already, I want to make sure that you guys are familiar with the From Seed to Spoon app and make sure that you have downloaded that, because that is going to help walk you through everything that I'm talking about today. It'll give you exact planting dates based on your location. It'll give you pest tips, companion planting tips, all of that. So make sure that you check that out. It'll help you significantly. And I'll mention it a few times if there's anything in specific whenever you're getting started that it'll really help with. Okay. Next slide. I'm not controlling the slides, so I have a lovely assistant over here who is controlling it right now.
Sorry.
So first of all, I do want to make sure that you guys stick around to the end of this webinar, because we are going to be doing a giveaway at the very end. It is going to be for our Wow Wednesday deal that's going on right now through Park Seed. There is a Wow Wednesday deal going for the Happy Frog fertilizers for the all-purpose and the tomato fertilizer, which I have it actually right here. Like, I went and grabbed our bag that we have. I love this stuff. It works fantastic. It's super amazing for your plants. It's organic. It has a lot of really good ingredients in it. So we are going to be giving that away to a lucky winner that's present here today. And we're going to be announcing that towards the end. And if you don't win, don't worry about it. Today only, though, it is going to be on sale for $11. So that's over 40% off. So make sure you check that out. So first of all, whenever you are going to be going about deciding where to grow, I feel like there's so many different things to consider. You need to consider, is it convenient for you? Because you need to make sure that you see it too. Because if you don't see it, you're going to be less likely to take care of it. If it is out of sight, it's out of mind. So I always go about what is convenient for you. Not just in your sight, but things like, does it have access to water, to good soil, things like that. You just want to make sure it's in a good place. So in this picture up here, we have a container garden that's like right off of our porch here in this picture, and a bunch of different pots. Makes it super simple because our kitchen was right on the other side of that door right there. And we would just come right out, grab some herbs or something like that, and we would just take it inside, add it to whatever we were cooking, make it super simple, super convenient. So some other things you want to consider too whenever you're growing is considering sunlight, because there are some plants that love a lot of sun and heat. There are some things that really want it to be shaded and cooler. So some things that we've done in the past is put gardening beds like up against areas that are going to be shaded. So right here, we have a picture of one of our wooden raised beds, and this was built right up against our shed. And it would get shade in the afternoon. So that way we could extend the growing season a little bit for some of our cool season crops. So in this area, we did a lot of spinach, and we would plant them in the spring and let them go really far into the summer because they would get shade in the afternoon. So it would really help a lot. And then over here, you also want to consider some protection. So maybe something like putting it up against the shed like we had up there. And then also there are ways you can force make protection. You can do things like living shade walls, which is I'm a super fan of. It is where you do trellises and grow things up the trellis, and that way it provides some shelter from the sun and from the wind and storms and things like that. But if you don't have that option, you can definitely do something like this, like the shade cloth that I have in this picture over here. And the shade cloth can really help to extend your growing season or just help it through a super difficult summer. Sometimes even our tomato plants here in zone 7 can use a little bit of shade in the afternoon because it gets really hot sometimes. So having just a little bit of protection and a little bit of extra shade can really help to extend it a little bit. And then one other thing you do need is to consider, oh, you had it right, is to consider if you have Bermuda grass. And if you do have Bermuda grass, I completely understand where you're coming from. It can be a nightmare to deal with. We dealt with it a lot, but there is a really easy way to go about handling it. And we tried several different methods, and this was the one that worked the best. So in this garden right here, well, you can see this is what our backyard used to look like. It was completely filled with grass. So whenever we went through and created our gardens, we needed to go through and we wanted to kill that Bermuda that was underneath it. So that way it wasn't growing up into our pots or our raised beds, anything like that. So what we did was put down some layers of cardboard, and then we brought in some wood chips, and we would pile the wood chips on top of the cardboard. And this really helps to smother the area as well, kill the Bermuda grass. And it also really it helps to encourage earthworms and things like that, and to make that soil really good in just a matter of a couple years. So doing this method, well, you can see right there, that was our backyard in just 3 years after that current one right there that we just showed you. And you can see there's not a lot of weeds. The Bermuda grass was all underneath the cardboard and wood chips, and this worked really well for us. And I know it can seem daunting for a lot of people to try and find that amount of wood chips. But what we did was we went to our local compost facility, and they would give you free wood chips that you could put in the back of your truck or dump truck if you happen to have access to that. You could also do a method called chip drop. So we went and we signed up on the internet on chip drop. I think it's chipdrop.com, something like that. And we signed up, and you can ask local arborists to deliver wood chips to your house after they go through and take down trees in your local area, and they'll bring them and deliver them right to you. We got a huge delivery a couple times of just huge mounds of wood chips. It's amazing. So make sure that you check that out, and you can sign up for some free wood chips there. Okay, so after you go through and you pick where you want to grow and you find a good spot, you want to decide what you're going to grow in. So this can be super fun. You can decide what you want to grow in, anything from wooden raised beds. You have a picture over here of me and two of our kids going through, and we had made these right here. And it works really well. There's there's definitely pros and cons to each one of these things that I'm mentioning. So the wooden raised beds were fantastic for many reasons. It doesn't hurt your back. First of all, it can make it a lot easier to go through, and you don't have to deal with weeds and things like that. So there's several reasons why those are great, but then also there's things that aren't fantastic about them too. So this picture was probably taken like 2016, probably around that time frame, 2016. And by 2020, 2021, the legs had pretty much fallen off of them, but we still had the top parts. So we just laid those top parts on the ground. But just be prepared for knowing it, depending on the type of wood that you use, it may not last you for a super long time. Um, Now, a lot of that could have been user error too, not naming any names. But I mean, we're not the best builders in the world, so yeah, they could have just been us as well. But I do know that wood obviously doesn't last as long as the other things. So, but they are fantastic, especially since they're raised off the ground, and it's a great option if you especially have back problems, knee problems, anything like that. It can be a lot better to go about doing something like that. And then the middle picture there is the smart pots. Now, this is honestly my favorite. We have lots of smart pots in our garden. This is one of our favorite things to do. Whenever we had first heard of smart pots, we didn't really think anything of them. We thought that for sure they'd be falling apart really quickly and not lasting, and the plants wouldn't do as well. But it actually surprised us, and it was quite the opposite. We actually did a test in our garden that first year that we got smart pots, and it actually outperformed our wooden raised beds in the ground, and we had them all planted together just to see how it would do. And the smart pots performed so much better. They actually they're amazing because they're way better than other standard pots. They come in a bunch of different sizes, anywhere from like 1 gallons all the way to like these right here that I'm showing up here are round raised beds. I think that was the 100-gallon one, which is pretty large. I think it's like 3 or 4 feet across, and it's a really good size. But they're so simple too. You just take them from their container that they come in, unfold them, lay them down, put some soil in it, and then you're ready to go. And I've heard that these are supposed to last like 10 years. I mean, stories of even longer too. But ours that we still got from that first season, some of them are still like doing really good. And that was, I don't know, probably like 2016 that we started experimenting with smart pots. And they're doing absolutely amazing. They're super durable. The roots don't go around in circle like they do in traditional pots. So I always recommend people away from traditional pots just because it's really hard to keep a really healthy plant. And especially for me, because sometimes I forget to water. I love them because you can actually in the summer put these smart pots in like a little kiddie pool or something and put some water in it, and it'll soak up from below. It works amazing. It's great for the gardeners who forget about their plants a lot. And it really helps to keep really healthy plants. So, also, of course, there is the standard in the ground planting. Now, those are going to be, I mean, it can be a little bit more difficult at times as well because it is. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see the question that they had popped up on the screen. Are these also called grow bags? So yes, this is called a grow bag. It is a fabric raised bed. But I will say that the Smart Pots brand is way better than other grow bags. There's a lot of like Smart Pots was the very first one to come up with it. They're made here. They're actually made here in Oklahoma. And they're just a whole lot more durable than other grow bags that you'll find like off brands on Amazon and all of that. So I will definitely recommend Smart Pots, but not necessarily all the other grow bags. So I would definitely look for the Smart Pots tag whenever you do it. Yes, Cindy, they are definitely super easy to grow in, and the plants do really well. And they're really easy to set up too, because they come really small packaged. You literally just unfold them and put them up. They're great. And then in the ground, we some things, I mean, obviously it's going to do really well because you won't necessarily have to water as much because the roots are pulling from the ground. But you do have to worry a little bit more about things like the soil, how the soil is prepared, if you have enough of all the nutrients and things like that, which is why I typically like to recommend, especially beginners, to do raised bed or smart pot, something like that, because you can control that soil a little bit better. It's also better for things like weeds as well. You don't necessarily have to worry about the weeds coming up as much when you're not in the ground. And then also, things if you are in like some sort of flood area too, I highly recommend smart pots, because the first year we lived at our current house right now, we put all of our smart pots and we were planting out, and we didn't know that it would flood there. And so that summer we got really bad flooding, and it was like this much of water that just stayed there. But the smart pots just they did amazing. Now, they left like a ring about that high up on them, but all the plants in there were fine. They did great. Whereas a lot of local gardens and local farmers and things like that that had planted in ground at this time, they lost all of their plants. So especially for beginners, I always recommend doing some sort of raised bed, smart pot, something like that. Okay, so once you figure out what you want to grow in, we will talk a little bit about filling your beds with the soil. So this is one of the most important steps, is what goes in your bed. So this is geared a little bit more towards raised beds or the smart pots right here. And we do a lot of mix of what's called the Mel's mix, which is the square foot gardening, what their method is. If you're not familiar with square foot gardening method, it was a method developed by an engineer to fit as much as possible in a square foot. And he scientifically evaluated like how much could go in what square foot, what was the optimum soil that would help these plants do really well. So these right here, this Mel's mix right here, is a mixture of we have the 1/3 of compost, 1/3 of vermiculite, and then 1/3 of either peat moss or coconut coir. We do either one depending on what our access is, what we have available to us. So I usually do a third equal amounts of all three of those, and then just mix them up, and it works really good. We've done different ways to go about mixing this. Whenever we're doing it whenever we're making a lot of it, we've mixed it on a tarp in the middle of our lawn before, where we just take a 5-gallon bucket and fill it up with vermiculite, and then do another 5-gallon bucket filled with coconut coir, and then another 5-gallon bucket filled with compost. So just having like equal amounts as you go through. We've also used a compost tumbler before for making this soil mix, which made it really simple also. I never really loved using those compost buckets or the compost tumblers for actually making compost, but for making soil mix, it worked great. So I will say that compost is probably the most important ingredient here. So how many seasons can you repeatedly plant and grow in Mel's mix? That's a great question. Oh gosh, we actually talked with the Square Foot Gardening Foundation about this not too long ago. And they said that vermiculite definitely lasts you like, I think it was like 10 years or something like that. We did a podcast with them, our Why We Grow podcast, and we met with the creators. It was actually Mel's son and daughter that we met with. It was great. We'll post a link to that if you guys want to listen to them. They were super interesting. But I think they said something about that 10 years or so would be how long that vermiculite would last. All we do whenever we come back to it each spring is we add in extra compost. So each time we go about planting something new, we'll typically go through and do extra compost and fertilizer at that time whenever we're starting a new planting season. But that's really the only thing new that you have to go about adding. So once you make that Mel's mix that first season, you're good to keep going, just adding fresh compost and fresh fertilizers. So I will say too that compost is going to be super important. Now, whether you make it yourself or if you get it delivered in from somewhere else, or if you pick it up, this up here, we have, this was a picture of a big delivery that we had from our truck bed. We went and got a scoop at one of our local places, and that worked great. You can also go about making it yourself. We have compost bins here that we would add in a lot of, I mean, you can add in pretty much everything. We did coffee grounds, any sort of greens. There was one year, especially at fall, we went and got a whole bunch of extra pumpkins that people were using for decoration and things like that at Halloween time. And we went and we got an entire truck bed full and just tossed them into the compost, and it was amazing. Anything you can pop into compost, it makes it super simple. Oh, Shelly has a great question about what is vermiculite. So vermiculite, if you look at soil, it'll be those little white flakes that are in the soil mix. And like if you look at traditional potting mix, you'll notice the little white balls in there. That is what vermiculite is. It'll help retain the moisture whenever you go about watering. It helps to expand and take in a lot of that moisture and then give it water throughout, the additional times coming up. Now, I will mention that a lot of times you'll see perlite used instead of vermiculite, but vermiculite is way better. So if you're buying the ingredients yourself, make sure to buy vermiculite over perlite. Vermiculite's going to be a little bit more expensive, but it is going to last you way, way longer than perlite. In fact, in that Square Foot Gardening podcast episode that we did, like she was saying, yeah, do not even substitute perlite for vermiculite whenever you're making this, because it just does not work nearly as well. Okay, so how much compost do you add each season? This is a great question. So what I typically do is I'll just go through and get either a scoop for each plant or just cover a few inches over my bed. So if I notice that my bed has gone down, I'll just top it off. There's really no scientific amount that I add in each season. I just go through and add either a scoop per plant, like a shovel scoop, or just enough to top off that bed to make it full again. So yeah, make sure that you are always adding compost. Makes it a lot better for your soil mix. And there's nothing wrong as well too about buying a potting mix also in a bag. Now it's going to be better to have your own compost instead of bagged compost. So I will say, if you are doing like potting mix or things like that you buy from the store, try and see if you can find like another source for your compost, because it'll do way better than buying a bagged compost from your local big box store and all that. Okay, how do you fortify your beds and ground? Just add compost. So in the ground, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Like I said, what I typically recommend for people to do if they're starting fresh in their soil is to get a soil test. You can do this at your local extension agency. You can also send in tests. I think they have them at like local big box stores that you can pick them up as well. And that'll tell you what nutrients that you're lacking in, if you need anything extra in there. But definitely, yes, add compost in for sure. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so now is the fun part that we get to talk about, is how to pick what you're going to grow. So this is the best thing. So what I always make sure to tell people is, well, what do you like to eat, first of all? So if you are, well, that's only if you're growing to eat your food. Definitely only grow things that you're going to eat, because if you work really hard on growing something that you aren't going to eat, it's just going to go to waste. So like for me, I definitely would not grow mustard greens if my family didn't like them, because I can't stand mustard, although it's super pretty, but I don't like the taste of mustard at all. So that's not something that I would choose to grow, but I grow it for my family though. But always go with something that you're gonna like if you like to eat carrots, go ahead and grow some carrots. Something else that I always recommend as well too is replace some of your herbs that are in the kitchen that you like to use. So if you like to grow or use Italian seasoning a lot in the kitchen, go look at the back of the Italian seasoning and see what herbs you can use to add that and make that yourself. Super fun to do something yourself and replace it and feel like you have done a lot, and you'll feel super accomplished. And then also, a lot of the times I ask too about, are you growing for a certain health condition too? Or do you want to eat healthier? Are you growing for mental health? Any sort of things like that. And I do want to call out the app for this, because we created a section in there there's a specific filter. If you go to the filter section on the main screen, you can filter by, I think it's 26 different health conditions. So anything from weight loss to diabetes to, heart health, things like that. You can go through and you can see what plants are best for that health condition. So that may help guide you for picking what you want to grow. If there's some specific reason that you're wanting to go about growing, that can really help. And then also, what I do want to mention is pick something that will be successful for you. So I listed a few of these great beginner plants up here. And so a few of them are going to be things like peas and beans, which I always recommend these because you can plant one plant and have a huge harvest from them, which is amazing. So you can have like one bean, one pea seed, and you'll get lots of food from just one plant. And it is super rewarding. And if you have a lot of success whenever you first start, you're going to be more likely to keep at it. So I always recommend doing something like that. And then lettuce is something that is super simple as well. We've always had really good luck with it. Now, I always recommend not doing the head lettuce, but doing just the leaves of lettuce here. And then I put in basil, so whenever you guys registered for this event on Parkseed's website, you did all of you put in some plants that were really good for you. So I pulled the ones that most people talked about, so for the herbs, basil was the most called out one that you guys thought was super simple. But I'm going to say all herbs, really. A lot of herbs are going to be great beginner plants, and it's easy to forget about and forget to water, and they'll be pretty generous for you and pretty forgiving. And then peppers. Peppers are something that, especially for us, we can plant one pepper plant and get a huge harvest from them. We a lot of the times, like, we love collecting peppers and doing all sorts of different varieties. So at the end of the season, we have so many different peppers. So we have to look for ways to preserve them because we have this overabundance of peppers, which is great, but it is a lot. So peppers are definitely something that if you want a lot of, they're great to plant, and they love the heat. So in the middle of the summer, it is one of those that's going to do well for you. And then I put in here cherry tomatoes. So I will say tomatoes was something that a lot of people struggled with, as well as had a lot of success with. So I am going to say the variety of tomatoes as cherry tomatoes, because I will say that cherry tomatoes do a lot better, especially for me. Having something that I can harvest a lot sooner rather than wait for something larger to grow, you're going to be way more successful at having these smaller ones. So less of a chance for pests or something like that to come through and eat your tomatoes that you worked so hard on. So I will say the cherry tomatoes are definitely a lot easier than the large tomatoes. So if you're looking for an easy one, I would go about doing that here. And then, oh, very exciting. Melissa has park tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant seeds coming up now. That's so great. We are just now seed starting a lot of ours right now. That's really exciting. Um, Radish is another really great one that we direct seed this outside instead of starting from seed indoors. Just because any sort of root crops, you want to make sure to start outdoors because they can be really finicky about transplanting. So any sort of root crop, I start outdoors. And radish is one that you can get a really fast harvest from. So I always recommend doing something like that if you're a beginner because you can have success fast and it can be really fun to grow and harvest something within 30 days. It's fantastic. Um, and then broccoli was another one that was called out a lot. And I want to mention too, there are two different types of broccoli. There are the head broccolis that grow really large and you have to harvest them like at the end of the season. And then there's also broccolis that are sprouting broccolis. So this picture right here is the Aspa Brock variety from Park Seed. And they do really well. They're like sprouting broccoli. So they do these shoots of the broccoli and you can go through and harvest them really quick. I think you can start harvesting them within like 2 months, I believe it is, which is really great to have success and not have to wait for an entire head of broccoli to come up before you can harvest it. Because I will tell you, it is devastating. We had a hailstorm come through one year and all of our broccoli and cabbage and all of that was destroyed and it was devastating. So I always recommend doing something that is going to be a faster harvest for you. And then of course, zinnias are beautiful and they are definitely something that a lot of people seem to have really great success on. And it is definitely something that I've had a lot of success with as well. Whenever we go about planting them, we let them go to seed at the end of the season and don't pull them out. And they reseed themselves and will just come up really terrific next season as well, which is fantastic. I absolutely love it. And zinnias are also really good to add if you're growing food because they're a really good companion plant. They can help to bring in all sorts of pollinators. Yes, just like what Melissa says here. So her zinnia seeds for her butterflies. Yeah, it brings in so many different pollinators like the butterflies, the bees, things like that. And it does really great to help to encourage those ones to come in. Okay. And so I know a lot of people always mention fertilizer and they always ask questions about fertilizer. So I do want to mention a couple of my favorite fertilizers that I use. I always make sure to use the organic fertilizers and they have all organic materials. So just like the Happy Frog here, it has all sorts of good stuff that if we go and we get our ingredients in bulk a lot, it has like things like bone meal, all of that. It's fantastic and it's all organic materials. So the Happy Frog has a bunch of different like variety specific fertilizers as well. So this one right here was a tomato one. There's also an all-purpose one. And those are the two that are on sale right now, today only. So if you are wanting to do that, make sure you check that out. And I'm going to be giving two of them away at the very end here. So check that out. Make sure you stay. And then we're going to be, so we also love the Espoma fertilizers as well. They have all organic materials too. And we love the tomato and pepper fertilizers that they have as well. That's another fantastic brand. So if you're going to be going with fertilizer, make sure that it is going to be one that's an organic one, the Happy Frog, the Espoma, things like that. Those ones are really fantastic brands. And then also I do want to mention compost too. That definitely needs to be added in. It is very important and it can help to fertilize your plants as well. And we like doing the in-ground compost here because it can help get some worm activity as well. Worms can come up to get in there and So doing things like that. And if you wanted to do any sort of worm bins, that's something that you can do even if you live in a city. They have these worm bins that are really great. You can go through and add worms and then you just feed them every once in a while. And they call it like liquid gold. It is super amazing fertilizer. So it doesn't get better than that if you can make your own. So how do you properly compost coffee grounds? So I will say too, that was something real big that we did with all of ours was we added them into the worm bins. So whenever we would get, we could go to like the local coffee stores around here, and they would hand us like a huge bag, and we would just bring it home, feed it to our worms, and the worms would help to break it down, and we could just go about and take the worm castings, pop them directly into the ground or into your raised bed, wherever you're going to put it. Okay, so I do want to mention a few of the common mistakes that that I have definitely made in the past, and that are some common mistakes that some beginners can make. And the biggest one is probably over or undering water. It's really easy to over love your plants and give them too much water, which can hurt them, or to forget about them and not give them enough watering. So, a really good rule of thumb that I always say, I call a rule of thumb because it's like finger. If you put your finger in next to the plant, you can go through, and if you feel moisture at all up to your knuckle here, then if you feel moisture, you're good. If you don't, then you need to water. So it's just a really good rule of thumb to go through and test your plants. And overcrowding is definitely something that we are guilty of. We try to plant as much as possible. We get overzealous, super excited, and plant too much, too close together. So that was something that we did last season. That was probably our biggest mistake. So whenever we came back, we spread out our smart pots a little bit more, especially if we're going to be doing really large things, and like big tomatoes and things like that. We wanted to make sure that they had plenty of space and we had space to walk between it. Because if we can't walk between it, we're not going to be going through, we're not going to be harvesting as much. So we wanted to make sure that we had plenty of access to all of the plants, to check for pests, like all of that. So you want to make sure that your plants have plenty of space. And then also along with that, this very similar idea is letting the weeds take over. So again, it's super important to just at the very beginning of the season to just make sure that you have really good soil starting area. If you need to, lay down some cardboard and wood chips like we did. But just keeping up with it and not letting them take over, because once they take over, it's a nightmare to deal with. So just going out there and just making sure that they don't take over your garden is important to do. And then one thing I already did mention before about the garden being too far away and out of sight, but it is something worth mentioning again, is making sure that you see your garden, because if you see it, then you're more likely to take care of it, and you're more likely to see problems. If you have problems that are coming up, if your plants need water, you'll notice it better. So making sure it's close enough to you that it is super convenient, it's easily accessible, and that you see it, you can tell if there's any issues right away. And then also things like not treating your soil, not doing fertilizers or mulch. Also, we do a lot of mulching in the summer. It helps significantly with helping the soil to retain the moisture, so you don't necessarily have to water as much. It also can help in the winter to keep your plants warmer as well. So mulching is something that's super important. So once you pick out what you're going to be planting, just getting some mulch. So we do things like wood chips, pine shavings. Some people even take leaves and do that. So something like that, just to protect that base of the plant, can really help protect that soil and make it last a little bit longer into your season. And then I had to add this last one, not having our app to track your plants. So I had to be cheesy there, but I do think it is very important, especially for somebody like me who has a really bad memory. I can never remember when I start my plants. So going to the My Garden section and saying that I planted my plants can really help me keep track of. I go in and I document that I did it, and then it will also show when it's recommended, or when it is about to come out, sprout, and then when you can harvest it, things like that. And you can also go through and chart. And if you, I say chart, I'm a nurse, so that just comes to me. I always say chart and document and all of this. Um, but I go through and I chart that I watered it or that I found a pest. I could take pictures and have that in the app as well. So it's super helpful. And that's what this screenshot is over here. I have a bunch of different plants that are planted in my garden right now. And it goes through, like I can click on each one and it'll give me the specifics of each plant and what's going on with them. So I really like to do that so I can keep track of what's going on outside and all of that. Okay. So I do want to mention again too that if you guys have any questions, I mean, you can feel free to drop them in the chart or in the chat. But also we do have a new section in our app. If you haven't seen it, it's called Growbot. He is, oh, awesome. Thanks, Leslie. She loves our Growbot. Yeah, I ask him everything. I love Growbot too. You can go through and he's at the very corner, the bottom of the screen. You can go through and click Growbot, and you can ask him anything that you want to. So he is an AI chat bot. So and he will give you answers about any gardening questions that you have. So I have asked it questions about what are great beginner gardener plants, or how often do I water? What are good companion plants for this? It'll just help to give you super quick answers to your questions. Or if you have any issues going on, like if you have any pest issues, your leaves are turning a certain color, you can always ask Growbot, and Growbot usually has a pretty good response for it. It's really great. It's built on the latest AI tech. The boys love to go through and have the newest technology on all of it. And so if you've seen any news about like the chat GTP, this is very similar to all of this. This is just geared towards gardening. So you can ask it any of your gardening questions. Okay, so I want to mention again, have that webinar giveaway. And also, if you don't win, don't worry. We have that Wow Wednesday deal. So make sure you take advantage of that if you guys really love that fertilizer. And I highly recommend checking that out. So let's see if they have you picked the winner? Have you ran it through? Okay. The tech guy does it. Okay. The winner, Melissa Kennedy Whitehead. Congratulations. So Melissa, what you need to do, email me at info@seedtospoon.net, and we will get your address and we will ship out your fertilizers to you. And for those of you also, don't forget to check out the Wow Wednesday savings. We also have a really good deal too for 20% off of all of our organic and heirloom seeds right now at Park Seed. You just do the code GROWIT whenever you check out. There's a whole bunch of different seeds in there that are all on sale, and those are really great seeds. I have had a lot of great success with a lot of those seeds. I can definitely tell the difference when I'm growing quality seeds over like the cheap ones. So I definitely recommend checking out the sale. Okay, so are there any questions that anybody wants to go? We have a couple minutes. So John says, my parents used smart pots and had a hard time from keeping them from drying out. So I will say for sure, they do dry a lot quicker, not a lot quicker. I think we found that they dried about a day quicker than the ones that we had in the ground next to them. But something that we did do in the summer, especially with those smaller ones, what we can do is to take those smart pots and put them inside of a kiddie pool. and put some water in the bottom of it, and it can just drink from the bottom, and you can forget about them. It makes it a lot easier, especially if you are busy during the day, working, any of that. If you just go through in the morning and add in some water, you'll be good, and your plants will love you. You do want to make sure, if you do that, that kiddie pool trick, you want to make sure that what we did, we drilled holes along the outside about a couple inches up, just to make sure that if we had issues like rain or something, or they got overfilled with water, that they wouldn't just be sitting in the water for too long. So you do want to make sure that you are checking on it if you don't have holes drilled in it as well. Okay, have you tried to grow fruit trees in smart pots? Yes, I have. We've grown a lot of everything. I think right now we have cherry tree, we have apple trees, plums, and lots of fruit bushes also. We have things like blackberries, blueberries, things like that. So we do a lot in smart pots. I will say, if you're going to be doing one of the fruit trees, make sure to do one of the large ones. We usually do a probably like a 20 gallon at least is where we like to stay, a 20 or 25 gallon, and they have handles on the sides too, so they're movable. And I've also done lemon and lime trees in them too before, which makes it great because they're portable. We can move them inside into the garage whenever the winter time comes, because here we can't have them year round. So that's a way to help to grow things that aren't necessarily growable in your area. So if you do the fruit trees in the smart pots, I do recommend making sure to have extra fertilizers on hand for them. And Happy Frog actually has a brand, or not a brand, a variety of their fertilizer that is designed just for fruit. So that would be something really good to add in. I know Espoma has a very similar one as well that's for fruit. So I'd make sure to do that and add some extra fertilizers in there, and they'll do really great. Okay, Carl, how do you preserve peppers for later? Okay, I will touch on this. I will talk about this more in depth at another session, but I will say my favorite way to go about preserving peppers is actually freezing them. So what I do is I take them, I remove the stems, and I keep all of the membranes and seeds and everything like that inside. And I just run them through a processor and pull them out, lay them flat in the freezer for a day, and then I pull it out and then put it in just a freezer safe Ziploc baggie, and I put them in the freezer and they're good to go. So whenever I go through and I want them for, I use them to saute, to add to so many different dishes, and I just pull it out, pop it into our pan with some oil, saute them up. Fantastic. You can't even tell that they weren't fresh whenever you use them. So I always go about that's one of my favorite ways. We've also done things like drying them, smoking them, and all of that. There's a lot of different ways to go about preserving, but definitely freezing is my favorite way to do it. Okay. Same question. That was just such a good question. We had to do it twice. Okay. What is the best way to grow lettuces in pots or raised beds? So I mean, honestly, there's not too much to going about getting lettuce started. Depending on how organized you want to be, I will say a lot of times we go through it and we just sprinkle seeds through them. You can also do things like seed tape to put them in the smart pots or raised beds. The biggest thing, just while you go about planting them out, is just to keep it moist while they're germinating. That can be the most difficult part, is just to make sure that you keep them moist while you're germinating. But lettuces do really well in raised beds. They do fantastic. And again, I would recommend doing the loose leaf lettuces over the heads, just because they're so much simpler and you can start harvesting them really quickly. Okay, fertilizer is very confusing. I agree 100%. What is one? An overall fertilizer. So, um, I would say to always stick with Espoma whenever you are going about fertilizers and or Happy Frog, and they have directions right on here on the back, especially if you are doing like so for this one right here, this is a tomato one, but it gives you directions for tomatoes and peppers, and it says exactly how much per plant that you need to put on, how often. So the back of your fertilizer bag is going to be super helpful. You can always ask Robot as well, which is what I do a lot of as well too. I go in and check that out. Also in the app, there's a section too for fertilizing, and it'll tell you exactly which fertilizers and how often that you should be doing it. But typically, I mean, if you're doing like specifics, I would go and find a specific one, or there's also just all-purpose fertilizers too from Espoma and Happy Frog that are good. Can we rewatch the webinar? Yes, you can. So after this, it is going to be uploaded. It saves to YouTube automatically. So this will be available on our YouTube channel. It looks like you're watching on Facebook. So check out our YouTube channel at YouTube/From Seed to Spoon, and it'll be there on our channel. We'll post a link over here in the chat for you. Can I share the app between phone and tablet? Okay, that's a fantastic question. Yes, you can. All you need to do is make sure you create an account, and you can create an account for free and link it between the two. So you just need to sign in. So all of your plants will save and sync, and your favorites will sync, all of that. And also, if you are like wanting to look at it at a computer or something like that, where you don't have access to an app store, because it's available iOS and Android. But if you have something else that you want to see the app on, there is app.seedtospoon.net, and that will be accessible through any browser. So you can go in through there and you can see everything there, and you can also sign in and have all your plants there too. Okay, Melissa, your app is so timely. Awesome. They are popping up everywhere, but not as easy as is offered by Park. Good job. Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate that. We've been hardworking, that's for sure. Trying to make sure to answer all the questions, and I use it every day as well. I always need it, so it's super helpful for me. Oh, Mary has a fantastic question. Tell us about the hoops over the beds. So over here in this picture that I have, this is a PVC hoop that I have. And I have a video all about how I made these. It was super simple. All I did was take rebarb and put that in the ground for each of the 4 areas on the sides of the bed. And then I curved over this PVC pipe into each section, and then had a hoop ready to go. So I use these for 2 different reasons. Pretty much the biggest thing that I use it for is over the winter time. So if we have a cold snap coming through, or an ice storm, or even a hailstorm, things like that, I throw over some plastic sheeting over top of these and clip them on to the sides of the PVC hoop, and it can really help to protect your plants. And if you're wanting to extend your growing season into the winter, I know here for Zone 7, it works perfect. I can grow things all year long if I just keep it covered during our cold snaps with some plastic sheeting, and it works fantastic. You can also use the hoops for insect netting as well. And you can help to protect the inside from any sort of insects and all of that. So that's a great question. Okay, so the sprouting broccoli can be harvested like leaf lettuce, one at a time. Absolutely. Yeah, that's part of the beauty of it. You can go through and harvest as much or as little as you want to eat. So you don't have to take that entire head of broccoli. You can just take as many sprouts off the side as you want. So it's definitely definitely handy to have. I will mention as well that the leaves are edible too, and they taste amazing as well. That's something that we discovered when all of our broccoli plants were destroyed by the hailstorm that one season. The positive that came out of that was we learned that the leaves were edible, and the leaves tasted amazing. We just simply sautéed them and added them to our stir fries. So good. I highly recommend checking that. Okay. I kill rosemary every year. Any advice? Well, rosemary can definitely be challenging. I would probably recommend trying a different variety. I know there's different varieties that do well in different areas. I'm not sure where you're at, but here where we are in Oklahoma, Zone 7, the rosemary ARP performs really well, and it usually lasts really well over the winter here. I will say too, it doesn't like to be overwatered, so you can easily kill rosemary with too much love. So you want to make sure that you are letting its feet dry out. So not giving it too much water. That can definitely be something that you're having issues with too. Okay, I had a big issue last year with blossom end rot on my tomatoes. Yes, okay. So blossom end rot can be something that you didn't necessarily do yourself. So this can be caused by overwatering. And if you have a weird year for like storms coming in, you sometimes can't happen, it just happens. And you can do your best. But if you are the one that's watering, you can help yourself by making sure that your watering is even and regular and you're not letting it super, super dry out and then giving it a whole bunch of water. Things like that. And just giving it too much water can really make it happen. And oh, Marty, sorry. You made me jump. Um, so by having too much water, it can definitely like wash out the nutrients and wash out the calcium because it's typically some sort of calcium deficiency. So too much water can flush out that calcium from the soil. So making sure that you aren't doing too much water. Sometimes you can supplement with some calcium as well if you need to. Okay. Is it okay to use hay for mulching? So yes, it is okay, but there are definitely better options. Just because hay, you can have issues with weeds popping up from that. So I typically do things that aren't going to be sprouting. So I stick with doing like the like wood chips, pine shavings, leaves, things like that that don't have any sort of weed issues. So you can do hay, that's for sure, but I usually stay away from it because I don't want weeds. Okay. Oh, thank you, Josh. Yes. Don't forget to share. You can use the app on the computer as well. Thank you. Come from a somebody who definitely has been using the app on the computer. Okay. Marty, I think he's trying to tell us that we are we are coming at 8 o'clock. So thank you, Marty. He's our alarm clock, I bet. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming today and joining us. This was a lot of fun. And make sure that you do check out our app From Seed to Spoon. It'll help walk you through growing over 100 different fruits, vegetables, herbs, and it'll give you planting dates calculated to your planting zone. That's probably my favorite thing of it. But it'll also help like give you companion plants and pest management, and of course, Growbot. He's amazing too. So make sure you guys check that out if you don't already have it. And don't forget about our Wow Wednesday savings that is available for today only. So the 40% off of the Happy Frog, the tomato fertilizer, and the all-purpose ones are the ones that are on sale. And also the 20% off of the organic and heirloom seeds too. So make sure that you check out those deals. And thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you next time.